Hello, everybody. All right, so I just wanted to show you a couple of triggers that I created. Actually, it's one specifically, the input axis, which should actually be called input trigger or controller trigger, because that is specifically designed to be used with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox shoulder triggers, because they have a different value as you press them. All right, so I just want to show you how to set them up and make use of them. So first, I'm just gonna change here this one to be the input axis, and I'm gonna click play. We should actually get a lot of errors because this axis name does not exist, and that is totally fine. That I will show you how to enable it. So I'll show you how to enable both for the PlayStation 4 controller, and then I believe I have already documented where you can find the Xbox triggers, but it should be fairly easy to configure this. So first, let's put the triggers in there. Then we're gonna go over to project settings, and we're gonna go inside of the input manager. So I'm going to increase the size to 20. You can also edit an existing one, though I would not recommend changing either horizontal or the mouse up because that can mess up the cameras. Um, anyway, so here I just duplicated sprint. It actually always duplicates the last one, which is why I only created one. And I'm gonna call it trigger underscore L, and I'm just not going to have any positive or negative virtual buttons. Now the gravity, I'm going to set it to 1, and the dead zone, I'm going to set it to 19, and that's just because that's what I found that works for me. And then the sensitivity, I'm going to set it to 1. Now the key type is going to be joystick axis. And then the axis, I have a PlayStation 4 controller, and on PlayStation 4 it is fourth axis for the left trigger and fifth axis for the right trigger. So now that I have that, I'm just going to increase this to 21, and it's going to create the next trigger that's a copy of the first one. And I'm just going to change this from L to R, and then from the 4 to the 5th. And that is basically it. So now my triggers on my controller have been set up. Now for Xbox One controller, the axis on the left is actually going to be 9th, and on the right is going to be the 10th. So that's something just to keep in mind if you use a different controller. Now, other controllers like the Logitech F710 or F uh, 530 may have different triggers for those, but they are mostly buttons and they're not actually sensitive buttons. All right, so now that I have this set up, I'm gonna copy the name for this one, and I'm just gonna paste it here and call it R, and then I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna paste it here and call it actually left. That's actually the value that it was. Now, um, for the PlayStation controller, there is a problem where it starts from -1 all the way to 1. So what I did here is I added the normalize to account for that. So what this does is that it actually adds 1 to the count, so it actually brings it to 0. And the min and max value are in charge of allowing the range of the button to go from only from 0 to 1. And then the multiply is going to multiply whatever that is to store on a variable if you want to use the variable. So you don't actually have to use it, but you can if you wanted to. Now for these two, I have already set up an action that is going to show me the values for the variables. So I'm actually going to use those. So I'm going to set the variable here, and the variable actually can be quite useful to use for this because you can actually use that value to action different things. So for example, if you're accelerating, you can use that value to know how much you should be accelerating for. All right, so I'm just going to click and play now. And I have the values also showing on the screen. So this is the right trigger. And I guess it doesn't go all the way to 1 because I play too much Rocket League. And then on my left trigger, shows me the value, and it actually shows the debug. And now when you can actually see that if I'm not pressing anything, actually shouldn't be. Oh, that's right. That's another problem that there is with this, is that if you're lose focus from the screen, it goes to the middle of the range and automatically starts logging stuff. But as soon as you are in focus, then it goes back to zero. That shouldn't be an issue within game, um, but in the editor is quite annoying, especially if you have log lines that are showing up, or if you have something that depends on that not working. But yeah, so this is basically the only action if they go in between the values here. So now, if I have a multiplier, let's say I have a multiplier of 10, this is not going to affect this value. So this value is still going to go from 1 to 0, from 0 to 1, I mean. And if I click here, all it's going to do is that it's going to affect what value gets stored on the variable there. So that one was set up so it can go up to 10, but this one wasn't, so it can only go up to 1. And you can use any multiplier that you want. So for example, if you have, let's say, an animation blend and you want the blending to have a really high number for whatever reason, you can just set it up so that it goes from very, very low number to a really high number, right? So you can actually configure that here. All right. And that's how you set up the triggers, to actually use the triggers and store the values on a local number variable. And that's pretty much it. I hope this is actually useful for you, and have yourself a great day. Bye.